Segment 5, The End. 2 quotations. William F. Buckley, these are longish quotations, but they get at something, I think. Bear with me. William F. Buckley Jr., addressing a 1960 rally to protest the visit to the United States of Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, we deem it the central revelation of Western experience that man cannot ineradicably stain himself, for the wells of regeneration are infinitely deep. Khrushchev cannot take permanent advantage of our temporary disadvantage, for it is the West he is fighting. In the end, we will bury him." Quotation 2, Mark Stein in his new book, quote, "Look around you. From now on, it gets worse. In 10 years' time, there will be no American dream any more than there's a Greek or a Portuguese dream. For a while, there may still be an entity called the United States, but it will bear no relation to the republic of limited government the first generation of Americans fought for. And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness will be conspicuous by their absence." Close quote. You've devoted your lives to journalism, the first draft of history, but I know you both well enough to know that you read constantly, that you care about the final draft of history. What is happening at this moment in what we still flatter ourselves to call Western civilization, Andy?
I'm not big at the Western Civ questions. Get a little out of my control, but I will say that you know, I hope Mark doesn't talk that way at dinner parties, because he's not going to be invited back. Anyway, we were talked earlier about temperament, and there is something in the conservative temperament that is really drawn to doomsday and the apocalypse and the eschaton, as Bill Buckley would have called it. You know, you can go back and find almost identical quotes in Albert J. Nock, who was one of Buckley's great heroes from the 20s and the 30s. The end has been predicted since the beginning, and it just doesn't strike me as plausible. There's the American civilization, anyway, has revived itself too many times in the face of all that kind of doomsaying that it just strikes me as implausible that it's not going to happen again.
You don't have the sinking feeling, or at least the gnawing worry, you, the father of 2 children in college now, that in a very few years when they get out, they'll find jobs hard to find, that they'll be building their lives in an America that is less prosperous, more constricted in opportunities than the America that you, in your Zen Buddhist phase, faced?
Yeah, I worry about that, and everybody should be worried about things like that, because the worry is one of the things that means that it's not going to happen. You know, you mentioned I wrote speeches for President Bush in 1992. I wrote a big speech for him about declinism. In 92, it was the Clinton campaign told us it was the worst economy since the Great Depression, and children for the first time were going to grow up and have a life worse than their parents. And you go back and people were saying this in the 50s, and they were saying it in the 30s, and it just never seems to happen. It's sort of like the way liberals are always predicting that the great curtain of fascism is about to fall in America. It always seems to fall somewhere else, but never in America. And it's our version, meaning my friends and all my fellow conservatives, it's our version of that kind of hysteria, this doomsaying.
However, Rome did fall.
Rome did fall, but I think Rome fell for a number of reasons. Interestingly, perhaps one of them was a religious awakening, actually. Look, I'm completely with Andy, and I speak to some extent as an outsider. Although I've lived in this country for 17 years now, majority of my
Your children
life.
Your children would think of themselves as American.
Completely, yes.
Right.
This country remains for. Still, despite all its problems, and no one would minimize them, and Mark Stein is a wonderful writer and a great controversialist and provocateur, America has great problems, and it has great social problems, it has great policy problems, we are in this middle, I hope perhaps we're beyond the middle, but I don't think we are. We're in the process of working out this very, very severe through these economic headwinds. But America, as a beacon of opportunity. I came to this country, and I came to this country not from some benighted third world country or Eastern Europe. I came from cool Britannia. It was called when I left Britain and came to the United States. And the opportunities, the freedom, the idealism. America is the only country, as everybody knows this, but America is the only country built on an ideal. And it still is that ideal, and people still see that around the world, and they still want to come here. And that, above all else, will, I think, see America through, at least certainly my lifetime. I am certain my children's lifetime, and I would bet a few centuries yet.
Jerry said in an earlier segment that he considers journalism a high calling. I've never actually asked you, all the years we've known each other, I've never actually asked you this. How do you view your job as a journalist? Are you disinterestedly commenting on the passing parade from a particular point of view, which happens in your case to be conservative? Or do you view yourself as fundamentally attempting to represent ideals of liberty and fair play and excellence in journalism? Are you a participant or an observer?
Tom Wolfe had the great phrase, the gentleman in the grandstand, sitting there.
Yes.
Watching what goes on. I mean, partly good journalism is drama criticism in a way. I mean, to make it lively, you have to sort of look at it as a performance. I have not a reformist bone in my body. That is a matter of disposition. I am absolutely not a world saver or an improver. I do like to think that I write from a point of view that's defensible and healthy, but I'm not out to change the world. I rather like the world.
From a lecture by Rupert Murdoch, he gave a series of lectures in Australia, I believe about 2 years ago. Quote, "My father," and from the context, it's clear that Mr. Murdoch is associating himself with this view, and he's talking about his father, who was a journalist before him. "My father believed that the newspaper was among the most important instruments of human freedom." Close quote. Could Andy Ferguson write such a sentence? Or is that just too baldly idealistic for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think I would write such a sentence, but I certainly agree with it. I mean, the flow of information, the free flow of information is, it's hard to talk about it without lapsing into cliches, but they're cliches because they're true. It's the lifeblood of self-government. If people don't have access to information, they can't govern themselves, and newspapers are the way that this happens.
All right, Jerry, you said a moment ago that you encourage your 5 girls to consider journalism. You encourage them to. What's the degree of enthusiasm with which you counsel your own daughters about a career in journalism?
Yeah, I shouldn't get carried away here because that's
because they might answer back.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
We do have a Facebook page on which they're welcome to comment. Again. Sorry to be falling into line. You realize what I'm going for here. There's the question of idealism, the question of a future in the field. All of these things come together in that question. Would you want your daughter, your oldest daughter who's about to go off to college, would you want her to do it?
Well, you point up the bifurcation there, which is the idealism. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I've been privileged to have the most wonderful career, not only personally in terms of the personal reward that I have got from being a journalist, but I think also, I would say in terms of being able to be part of, and as you say, more as an observer than as a participant, but part of we have lived through extraordinary times in my adult lifetime, extraordinary. So it has been a wonderful privilege for me, and I hope I'll do it for some time yet, to be part of that. It's a wonderful, and I couldn't say honestly to my daughters that there is anything I would rather have done, and I would rather they if they want to do what they want to do, I would encourage them completely.
Just marry a rich man?
It's tough. Yeah, exactly. Commercially, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, I can't. You also have to think about self-sufficiency, and there are going to be a lot of journalists who are not living who are living on borderlines self-sufficient lives, barely.
Gillum calls you from the University of Virginia. First of all, to hear you tell the story, it would be remarkable if he called.
Yeah.
And Gillum says, "Dad, I've been thinking it through. I've gone to the career counseling people. I want to do what you did. I want to go into journalism." And that's your response? You laugh at him?
No, there's about as much chance of that happening as my turning into a pumpkin right now.
All right.
But he's been able to see the kind of life that I've led, I think. You know, Mencken had the great line, it's the life of kings. And if you're lucky enough to be able to keep body and soul together and make a living, it's the greatest life there is.
All right. Lord Beaverbrook, British press baron of the early and middle of the 20th century, was once asked what he required of his reporters. And Beaverbrook replied, "All I require is shorthand, typing, and a certain low, rat-like cunning." Had you not heard that one?
No, I don't
It's
think
one of
so.
John O'Sullivan's favorites. So let us suppose, if your son Gilliam is not among them, let us suppose that there are some high school and college students watching this program who'd like the advice of two of the country's leading journalists. Jerry?
Why wouldn't you want to be able to be part of telling the story of American, but also of world history? If you are moved by the processes of history, if you are fascinated by that, if you're fascinated by the economics, the politics, what goes on in society, if you are, and who cannot be? And that's my point. Who cannot be fascinated by
What
that?
do I need to do to get hired by you?
The
seriously,
rat-like cunning would come in very, very, very handy right now, I think. First of all, again, the Wall Street Journal is thriving. I don't want to be complacent about it, but we have been doing well. And I hope, will continue to do well, and we continue to need energetic, intelligent
You want an English
reporters.
major? You want English majors?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. We want people who are intelligent, inquisitive, hardworking. I'd like some good writers, actually. We have some good writers. I'd like even more good writers. I think a part of what I love about Andy's work, it's just so, not only is it intelligent and the ideas are so good, it's just engaged, it's just a beautiful thing to read. And I think newspapers could all benefit from being even more beautiful things to read than they are. I think, but you don't have to be an English major to be a good writer.
Andy, advice for it. We'll leave Gilliam out of it. Advice for
He'll be
his
happy to
roommate,
hear
let's
that.
say.
Read everything you can get your hands on, and keep alert, and be ready to work hard. In fact, work hard even before you start working. Just keep working, and then send your resume to the Weekly Standard, where our new personnel director, Herman Kane, will be happy to
And I do think the other advice I would give is write. I say this to my daughters. I say this to anybody who asks. Write, just write. And it doesn't matter. It may not get published. 99% of what anybody writes in their life probably that doesn't get published. Even great writers. Even great writers. Just write. There is nothing to substitute for the practice and the experience that is gained by writing, and love the word. That's what people should do.
Gerard Baker, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Wall Street Journal, and Andrew Ferguson of the Weekly Standard, and the author, most recently, of Crazy You. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
I'm Peter Robinson for Uncommon Knowledge. Thanks for joining us.